Now on to our featured performer, Margo Carruthers. I've known Margo for 23 years when I first joined the Helen Creighton Folklore Society back in 2000. And she is a wonderful friend and colleague. And her and I actually used to co-host together, the What the Folk, it was called. It was an open mic session for the Helen Creighton Folklore Society. And we had a lot of fun with that. And, but Margo is not just a wonderful human being, she is a wonderful singer, a storyteller. She is, you told me to be nice, now stop laughing over there in the corner.
She's not just rolling her eyes, her whole head is going around.
She is a wonderful, she knows her ballads inside and out, and she is a wonderful shanty singer as well. Sings with the Dory Bungholes. Some of you may remember them. So I'm really excited to hear this presentation by Margo, The Power of Song. And I'm really looking forward to hearing you sing and hearing you tell. And I hope the crone doesn't come out because I'm scared of her. Okay, oh good. Yeah. All right, everybody, I'd like to introduce Margo Carruthers.
Thank you, Cindy. Oh my goodness, look at all you people. Is there nothing else going on in Halifax on Thursday night? So nice to see you all here. It's wonderful, though, to be here with you, sharing what I have. The presentation's called Women and the Power of Song. And I'll just start. Something magical happens when an impassioned singer, an attentive listener, and a good song all come together. The room fades, and a whole new world appears. A good song can enchant, it can inspire, it can even heal. It can awaken wonder or reconnect us with our humanity. Such is the power of song. But where does the power come from? A good voice? Sure. A good melody? Yeah. But the source of a song's power is really in the story that it tells. Riveting stories stand the test of time. Shakespeare's plays, the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm, and in the world of traditional English music, without a doubt, the most influential and emotionally powerful story songs are the Child Ballads. And what are the Child Ballads? These, the English and Scottish popular ballads. 305 traditional ballads and their variants in 5 volumes. And they were published between 1882 and 1898. And they're so named the Child Ballads because of their compiler, the Harvard folklorist and scholar Francis James Child. They're sung poetic narratives that originated in the British Isles between the Elizabethan period and the early 19th century. And Child was among the first to consider these ancient songs an important part of early English literature, right alongside the works of Geoffrey Chaucer and Edmund Spenser. Now, Child was a textual scholar, not a field collector, and so it's no surprise that they were found in old manuscripts dating from the 15th through 18th century, in papers tucked away in British libraries and private collections. Child demonstrated the importance of paying attention to these old songs, of seeking them out in all their variations and sources, and of sharing that information so these songs can remain in active performance. In an article on Child in Sing Out magazine, British folk musician Martin Carthy was asked, well, Martin Carthy is probably the preeminent modern interpreter of Child Ballads. Now, he was asked why people should bother singing these old songs today. And you know what he said? The polite bits, I can tell you. He said, and I quote, because they're fabulous songs. They're fabulous songs. They They're fabulous stories. They tell us immense amounts about people and how they treat each other, trick each other, cheat, chisel, and love each other. There's an extraordinary understanding of humanity in them. But you do have to sometimes kick the buggers into life. Find them a tune here and there, and they can take it because they're fabulously resilient. The only thing I believe you can do to hurt these songs is to not sing them. End of quote. I couldn't agree more. So I think we should sing one. What about it?
Yeah, all right.
How about Child Ballad number 4? Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight. And there's a refrain for you. Lines 2 and 4 of every verse. Line 2 goes, fine flowers in the valley. Can you try that? Fine flowers in the valley. And line 4, as the rose is blown. As the rose is blown. I think, by George, I think they've got it. I'm going to throw you a curve though, because it's the first 2 verses, we set the tone with the minor key. And then the third verse, the next 3 verses, we go into the major. And then we alternate depending upon which character is speaking or the action being undertaken. And the arrangement I've chosen is by Steel Eye Span, British folk rock pioneers notorious for kicking the buggers into life. In the world of the child ballads, where men have the physical strength, the double standard, and the force of authority on their side, a woman's wit is her only sure resource. The elf knight sits on yonder hill, fine flowers in the valley. He blows his horn, both loud and shrill, as the rose is blown. He blows it east, he blows it west, fine flowers in the valley. He blows it where he liketh best, as the rose is blown. And Lady Isabel sits a-sewing fine flowers in the valley, when she heard the elf knight's horn a-blowing, as the rose is blown. If I had that horn a-blowing, fine flowers in the valley, and yon elf knight for to sleep in my bosom, as the rose is blown. Scarcely had she these words spoken, fine flowers in the valley, when in at the window the elf knight's broken, as the rose is blown. 'Tis a very strange matter, fair maid, said he, fine flowers in the valley. I cannot blow my horn, but you call on me, as the rose is blown. Oh, will you come to the greenwood side, fine flowers in the valley? If you will not come, I'll cause you to ride, as the rose is blown. He leapt on his horse, and she on another, fine flowers in the valley, and they rode off to the greenwood together, as the rose is blown. Light down, Isabel, said he, fine flowers in the valley, for we've come to the place where you are to die, as the rose is blown. 'Tis 7 kings' daughters here have I slain, fine flowers in the valley, and you shall be the 8th of them, as the rose is blown. Sit down a while, lay your head on my knee. Fine flowers in the valley, so we might rest before I die. As the rose is blown. She stroked him so fast, the nearer he did creep. Fine flowers in the valley, and with a small charm she's lulled him to sleep. As the rose is blown, with his own sword belt so fast she's bound him. 5 flowers in the valley, and with his own dagger so sore she stabbed him. As the rose is blown. If 7 kings' daughters here have you slain, 5 flowers in the valley, then lie you here, a husband to them all, as the rose is blown. Can't you just hear a medieval audience shouting? Well, the women at least. Yes, just what he deserved, the bastard. Well, they might have thought it, but it wouldn't have been wise to acknowledge it in mixed company. Music has long been a platform that allows women to express themselves and have their voices heard. Today's artists can freely write and sing about the struggles of womanhood and openly engage audiences who want to shout the same things they do. But in the society depicted in the ballads, a woman's range of options was comparatively microscopic. Under the unrelenting glare of cultural expectations, Big Brother was indeed watching, literally. And so was Dad, and Grandpa too. Male prerogatives, including all those commonly found within the patriarchy, decision-making, sexual control, ownership of family, and the assumption that the best place for a woman was in the nuclear family propagating the race, were primary. Men were not punished for assaults on women. The family was often initiated by the man and often without the woman's consent. An unmarried woman, well, she was fair game. A married woman as chattel took any initiative at her peril, and not surprisingly, the heterosexual bias was pervasive. It's impossible to establish when or by whom a particular ballad was created centuries ago, but historical evidence establishes the ballad as a strongly, though not exclusively, female tradition. It's not by chance that most of the ballads in Child's collection can be attributed to women. And why not? Think about that. Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight, independent woman ballads like that, they would have spoken at some conscious or unconscious level to the women who found them appealing enough to learn and remember. It would not be a stretch to say that the women circulating these ballads would have, well, they seem to have imparted some kind of coded messages to the women in their audiences. Now, messages that the women were only too eager to hear, that they were not helpless victims, nor were they inferior beings, and they could have some measure of control over their own destinies if they fought for it. The acts of strong, independent women who transgress the norm of their societies, whether as ballad subjects or ballad singers, can absolutely be interpreted as instances of coding or covert expressions of subversive or disturbing ideas. Lady Isabel's success. It tells a female listener that she is smart enough to defeat any man who tries to control her, while the Elf Knight's defeat tells a male listener if he's listening, that he has no right to control or victimize her, and that if he tries, he may find himself very well bested by the very woman he sought to control. Whether deliberate or unconscious, coding is a common phenomenon in women's culture. Because it's essentially ambiguous, coding protects women from potentially dangerous responses from those who might not appreciate their messages. Oh, Hattie Hicks Presnell. She's a traditional singer from Beech Mountain, North Carolina. She's got a fascinating story from her youth that pretty much illustrates this principle. Apparently her sister was talking to a young man, and the family didn't trust this guy. So they asked Hattie if she would sing in his presence Pretty Polly, which is a ballad depicting the murder of a too trusting young woman by the man who was supposed to marry her. And in Hattie's account, she was supposed to notify her sister of the family's uneasiness regarding the man she was seeing without letting the man himself in on the message. Now Hattie, in the end, she declined this request, and she said that she tersely acknowledged the song's power to influence an attuned listener, and said, "It wasn't none of my business." A song performance of that type for her might cause a lot of people to be careful about going off with others. Well, duh, that was the point. Anyway, this is Pretty Polly. You decide, you see what you think. I courted Pretty Polly the livelong night. I courted Pretty Polly the livelong night, and I left her next morning before it was light. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, come along with me. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, come along with me. Before we are married, some pleasure to see. And so she got up behind him, and away they did go. She got up behind him, and away they did go, over the hills to the valley below. They rode on a little further, and what did they spy? They rode on a little further, and what did they spy? But a new dug grave and a spade lying by. Oh, Willie, I'm feared of your ways. Oh, Willie, I'm feared of your ways. I'm afeared you would lead my poor body astray. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, you're thinking about right. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, you're thinking about right. I've dug at your grave the best part of last night. Oh, Willie, spare me my life. Willie, spare me my life. How could you kill a poor girl who wants to be your wife? No time to stop, no time to stand, no time to stop, no time to stand. He pulled out a dagger hidden all in his right hand. He stabbed her to the heart. Her heart's blood it did flow. He stabbed her to the heart. Her heart's blood it did flow. And into the grave pretty Polly did go. He covered her over and started for home. He covered her over and started for home, leaving none but the wild bird and beast for to moan. And now to the devil a debt I must pay. And now to the devil a debt I must pay for the killing of pretty Polly and running away. The text of the Appalachian murder ballad, Pretty Polly, can be traced back to two English sources. One of them, a child ballad. Can you guess which one? Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight. And the other is a British broadside ballad called the Gosport Tragedy, also known as the Cruel Ship's Carpenter. Every key element of Pretty Polly was present in the Gosport Tragedy centuries earlier. There's no time for pardon, there's no time to save. All night long I've been digging your grave, and now it lies open, the spade is standing by, which caused this poor maiden to weep and to cry. Just 1 second, I have to. Sorry about that. Broadsides appeared shortly after the invention of printing in the 15th century. They were authored song lyrics designed to fit traditional tunes, cheaply printed and sold for pennies on the street corners of major cities and towns from the 16th century onward. Most were salacious, hack-written, topical ballads depicting recent crimes, executions, and disasters, and the people couldn't get enough of them. They gobbled them up with the same voracious appetites as the followers of fake news in today's anti-social media. But they sometimes mimicked the language of much older songs, and determining which was a problem that both confused and vexed Child, although he called them veritable dung heaps. To be fair, Broadsides also preserved traditional ballads that might otherwise have been lost from popular tradition. He covered her up so safe and secure, thinking no one would find her, he was sure. And then he went on board to sail the world around, before that his murderous crime could ever be found. Well, good luck with that, Willie. Sailors' tales were a fertile source of material for the printed ballad sheets. Ballad shops all over the UK continued to print sheets of the Gosport Tragedy's tale right through the 19th century, often making small changes to the scansion, well, that would be the meter or the rhyme, or changing, cutting its length as they went. One significant change occurred when someone decided, well, that would have had to have been a woman, someone decided that William was getting off far too easily in the original song. What was needed, they felt, was for someone to give William a far nastier death. Enter Polly. Well, Polly's ghost, carrying the ghost of her baby, was only too happy to oblige. After introducing herself on board ship to the captain, he turned from early one morning before it was day. The captain, he stepped up, and these words he did say: "There's a murderer on board, he must be known. Our ship is in mourning, we cannot sail on." Then up steps the first man, "I'm sure it's not me." Then up steps the second, "I'm sure it's not me." Then up steps bold William, to stand and to swear, "I'm sure it is not me, sir, I do vow and declare." He turned from the captain and thought himself free. But the ghost of his Polly would not let him be. She ripped him, she tore him in three. Because that he had murdered her poor baby and she. There's something very appealing about the dead girl getting to play such an active role in her killer's demise. The fact that there are so many surviving copies of this song's various ballad sheets is testament to just how many were produced, and hence of how popular the song remained. Helen Creighton collected a variant right here in Nova Scotia, along the eastern shore, from the singing of Mr. Philip Warner in September of 1951. In that one, pregnant girl hangs herself after being abandoned by her lover. He goes off to sea to escape her ghost, but the spirit follows and finds him. She then threatens the captain until he's produced, and then well, you'll see. It's a great plot for a tragic opera, and Mr. Warner would be horrified at my not-so-subtle rendition. But in the words of Deli Norton, a traditional ballad singer from Madison County, North Carolina, it ain't about how pretty you sing, it's all about how good you tell the story. This is The Dreadful Ghost. It's of a sailor of whom I write. Unto the seas he took a great delight. 2 maidens fair he did beguile, and those 2 maidens he had with child. One of them for public shame unto some handsome grove she came, and there at length for to end all strife she cutted there the thread of life. 2 men hunting chanced to see her body hanging to a tree, her flesh by small birds was beastly tore, which grieved those young men's hearts full sore. Oh, with a knife they cut her down, and in her bosom this note was found. Don't bury me, but on the ground pray let me lie, and every one that passes by a warning take, and mark what follows when it is too late. Since he's proved false, I will prove just, and while on earth he'll have no rest. And while on land she plagued him so, to the seas at last he was forced to go. One morning on the topmast high, a little boat he chanced to spy. A little boat appeared to him, in it a woman and 2 little men. Down decks, this young man goes, down to the captain in his morning clothes. He says, Captain, stand my defense, for I see a spirit coming. And the captain, up on deck the captain goes, and there he spies this mournful ghost. Now, Captain, just stand calm while I speak to such a man. And the captain tries to deceive her, and he says, No, he's not here, he's dead. Died in St. Helens, we buried him there. Captain, don't tell me so, for he's alive in your ship below. And if you don't bring him up to me, a mighty storm you soon shall see, which will cause both you and your men to weep and leave you slumbering in the deep. Down decks, the captain goes, and he brings this young man up to his foes. And when she fixed her grim eyes on him, she surely made him tremble. Don't you remember when I was a maid? You caused my poor trembling heart to bleed. Now I'm a spirit of comfort now. You balked me once, but I've got you. Now, down in her boat, she forced him. Down in her boat he was forced to go. And as she did, we all did admire, and the boat went down in a flame of fire. But as she sank, she rose again and said, "Sailors all who are left behind, never prove false to young womenkind." And this is the way she ended her life, because she was not a sailor's why she would want to be is a tale for another day. For the best part of 300 years, people have been unable to shake this melodrama out of their imaginations. Our ancestors lived in a time when the supernatural was as real to them as the air that they breathed. Now, I've taken that delivery a bit over the top, but that was deliberate, because what I wanted to do was to come close to the feelings that would have inspired their songs and stories, to try and replicate what they must have seen and heard in their mind's eye. Now, some songs can take it, as Martin Carthy noted earlier, and this one certainly fits the bill, but there are others that eschew bells and whistles. Their power lies in their simplicity. And I'm going to close this portion of the evening with what I consider to be probably the most powerful song in my repertoire. And it's not even in English, it's in Scottish Gaelic. It's the lament for Gregor MacGregor of Glenstrae in Scotland, who was murdered by his father-in-law in 1570. The pathos of this song, it's heightened by the widow's absent-minded lullaby to the child she's nursing, in between the stark verses that tell of his brutal murder and her own personal anguish. Now, in verse 1, she's lying in bed in the morning and she's thinking about how fortunate she is to have Gregor in her life. She gets up in verse 2, goes all around the house looking to find him, but she can't find him anywhere. In verse 3, she goes outside and she finds him. Well, she finds his head on a post not too far from the front door, and his body just tossed aside like garbage. Verse 4 translates literally as, "When all the other young women of the township are sleeping soundly in their bed, I will be at your graveside wringing my two hands." This is Gregor Crea, beloved Gregor. Ba 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 molenu, ba molenu ba ba molenu, chaniel wachba, shem agohia fluchis cheerum. Sheechen and Shachshin, Yo Grigel Gons Creighton, Rish and Gavangin, Ba 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 Mulianu, Ba Mulianu ba ba. Haniel wachba, Yidich mig an chomer vulach, Ser in mi en tailar, Chadur misha grego kria na huye mun klar. Baba molenu, ba molenu ba, ba molenu, Haniel wach ba. Edelvor, hallo kan gawin gorsti a tool and che. Sorlet to jou der plok darling, tak and Beckford cray. Ba 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 molenu, ba molenu ba. Ba molenu Haniel wach ba Nur of Rannoch of Alla and Noch Nan cattle salve Son of his misher brew like dolikia Bulag Mogalab Ba 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 molenu Ba molenu ba Ba molenu Hanielu ach ba. The head, the heart, and the guts is what a song should speak to, or what's the point? Therein lies its power. I would like to thank John Stone and Cindy, and the Helen Creighton Folklore Society, the Dartmouth Heritage Society, for inviting me here tonight to share this presentation of women and the power of song. And here we are in Evergreen, where I'm sharing it with you in the home of Dr. Helen Creighton, who is, well, she's a woman who epitomizes the power of song, if you think about it. Definitely. I'm being pointed at for some reason. Oh, hello. Anyway, yes, and I'd like to thank you for entrusting me with your head and your heart and your guts this evening. Oh, and I'm supposed to be looking over here?
There's 3 cameras, you can look anywhere.
I can look anywhere. Okay, I'm leaving now. I'd love to thank you all so very much for having me here tonight. And you've been absolutely marvelous. We'll take those little breaks.
Wow. What a way to touch your heart and your soul, eh? Oh, it was beautiful. Very beautiful.